I don't know what you're thinking. Should I stay or say goodbye?
Hello and welcome to Long Live Hooky Street, the podcast where we rewatch and discuss every episode of Britain's most beloved TV comedy, Only Fools and Horses. I'm Heather and I'm joined from Denver, Colorado by my co-host and sister, Jenny. Say hello, dude.
Hello.
Today we are discussing part 1 of the 1990 Christmas special, Rodney Come Home. So grab a bowl of ketchup for your pie and chips and let's get started.
So it's Christmas 1990 and Rodney Come Home aired on the BBC on Christmas Day at 5:10 p.m. with a runtime of 75 minutes. The viewing figures hit 18 million for this one, not as high as the Jolly Boys outing, but on par with most of Series 6. And it's official. It's the first Christmas of the 90s. We mentioned this in our Series 6 wrap episode 2 weeks ago, how many classics first started airing this year. Many of the decade-defining classics were either first aired or premiered over in the UK from the US, and because of Sky TV becoming available there were quite a few more channels available to those who got that in the early 90s. Like we think we did, maybe 92, 93, we're not exactly sure.
Yeah.
But we're still going to focus on the 4 main channels at the moment that we all had, all of the UK. So on Christmas Day, viewers may remember repeats of Dad's Army, Allo Allo and the 2 Ronnies, the usual Top of the Pops Christmas special and the BBC's premiere of E.T. Right before Rodney Come Home was the news, and the airing was followed by Bruce Forsyth's Generation Game. such a classic.
I loved that show.
Me too. I really did. I loved the cuddly toy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everyone loved that, right?
Yes.
And then the BBC also premiered the 1987 movie Baby Boom later that evening. And that's pretty relevant since we just lost Diane Keaton this year, I think. ITV had a Strike It Lucky Christmas special with Michael Barrymore, and they premiered the 1987 movie Beverly Hills Cop 2. And I thought this was a cool one. On Christmas Eve, the very first Wallace and Gromit film, A Grand Day Out, made its debut over on Channel 4. And the film itself had already had its premiere a year earlier at an animation festival in Bristol, but this was the first time it was aired on TV, so that's quite a British classic. I do love Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah.
Let's look at who was in the charts at this time. Christmas number 1 this year was Saviour's Day by Cliff Richard. And the top-grossing movie for 1990 in the UK was Ghost, starring Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. Top of the charts at the time of Rodney Come Home airing was Home Alone.
Yeah.
Still. Yeah.
Da, 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 da.
Another relevant one because we lost Catherine O'Hara this year too.
Oh, yeah.
What a terrible year for losses. But anyway, let's move on to the trivia for this week. We touched upon this 2 weeks ago in our wrap episode, but Rodney Come Home was originally written to be the first episode of Series 7 and was extended in length to turn it into the 1990 Christmas special at the request of the BBC. According to the official Inside Storybook by Steve Clark, the critical reviews of this episode were positive. Today's Pam Francis said, "Rather than keep the Trotter brothers in a time warp, their creator, John Sullivan, has taken the risk of moving them on with the times. By doing so, and getting Rodders hitched, he's been able to tackle relevant issues. This was the first episode to have Raquel officially on board as a permanent cast member. Chesapeake Jones now appears in every episode all the way up to the very end of the show." And along these lines, this was the first episode to contain the shots of the new extended Nelson Mandela set, which was made larger to accommodate more actors. Now with Raquel living at the flat with Del and Albert, a subtle change was made to allow more space to stage the shots. We also talked about this in more detail in the series wrap. The location shooting for this episode was done in Bristol between October 7th and the 24th, 1990, with the studio shoots taking place on November 9th, 10th and 11th. 3 days of studio shooting for this episode. That's probably the most they've done so far. And the end credits of this episode, just like the Jolly Boys outing, did not use the classic Hooky Street song, and since the episode ends on a somber note, the song Somebody Who Loves You by Joan Armatrading was used. Sullivan used this episode to explore the problems in Rodney and Cassandra's relationship, stemming from Cassandra's ambition and Rodney's loss of his mother at a young age. A John Sullivan quote from the lovely Jubbly book reads, I based Rodney and Cassandra's relationship around the fact that she was ambitious. She was involved in the banking world, a field Rodney believes is his strength, what with his GC and maths. But of course, it goes too far. She's more ambitious than he wants, because Rodney really longs to be made a fuss of, which is what he lacked throughout his childhood. And the final note here, I am sure this will be a big discussion point this week. The Nag's Head is oddly absent from this episode, as are many of the supporting cast. We get no Trigger, no Boise, no Mike, no Denzel. It's oddly quiet. And the only side characters to make an appearance really are Mickey and Chris, with a brief appearance by Alan. And I'll leave it there right now with my usual further notes being added for the episode breakdown. But shall we go ahead and move on to our rankings for this week, dude?
Yep, let's do it. So, our regular listeners will know by now that each week we reveal and compare our rankings for the episode. And prior to recording the entire podcast, we independently ranked all 64 episodes. So if you didn't already know all that, then you're not yet one of our regular punters. And we would love for you to subscribe to the podcast. We release a new episode either every Saturday or every other Saturday. Also, please do give us a like if you enjoy the episode and tell your mates about us, because we really need your support to continue putting in the time and effort that we have been. So, dude, this episode, I am very curious to hear what your ranking is for this one.
Yeah, me too. I want to pull up the charts of all of our rankings so I can try to see what spaces you have free. Hold on one sec.
Okay, sure. So I think that your ranking for this will be quite a bit lower than a lot of the other episodes in this era of Only Fools and Horses. But I can't guess the exact number.
I'm going to look at the chart and I'm going to guess yours is it your 47?
No, it's lower.
Oh, then it must be your 58.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chart to see what spaces you have left. That's so low for you.
Yeah, it is. I can explain. So I don't know your sort of slots that are available, but I would put this in your 40s probably.
Actually, it's higher than my 40s. You're going to be, this is such a wide variation this week, and I will start with Fran's ranking. Fran's is 16.
What?
Really high for Fran.
Okay.
This is where we all see, I guess everybody has different things they want out of an episode, and maybe their top ones are going to be more, they like the drama-based ones. They like the ones with emotion and sadness in, and that's probably why I think it's probably high for Fran. Me and IMDb are very similar, I will tell you that this week. And mine is not in the 40s, it's in the 30s.
Okay.
So we'll start with IMDb. IMDb's ranking is 39 and mine is 35.
Okay.
So it falls right in the middle for me, about halfway, yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
So I will say, because I know you're going to have a lot to say about this episode, I'll just say, rewatching it, because one thing about this episode is that it's not one that I'm super familiar with. I've seen it a lot of times, but it's not one I've watched as much as many of the others. So watching it again was kind of a refresher for me of the episode. And I actually hooked up my DVD player, watched it properly on my big TV and didn't make notes at the same time, just so that I could get a feel for the episode. And I quite enjoyed rewatching it. And I'm happy to see that I didn't have it super low down, because I wouldn't think that it should fall in the lower than 40s. I do think it is a good episode. The thing that I think a lot of people don't like about it, and I'm sure you have plenty to say.
I do.
It's not like a normal episode of Only Fools and Horses, but in its own right, it's pretty well written, and I did enjoy watching it, but it is exploring a completely different side for the first time of the serious relationship era of Only Fools and Horses. And if you don't like Rodney and Cassandra's relationship troubles, this episode is going to fall really low for you, and that's why I think yours is low. So go ahead.
Yes.
Rip into it.
Okay. Here we go. So this episode for me is not rewatchable at all. I think that people who've been listening to the podcast for a while now will know that I tend to rank episodes that I feel are highly rewatchable as my more favorite episodes, because of course if you watch something multiple times you like it and then you keep rewatching it. This one, I can literally only think of one part of the episode, and I won't tell you what that is until we do the breakdown, that I think is amazing. The rest of it, honestly, I get quite bored.
Yeah.
Listening to this episode, because it just feels so repetitive. So let's start with, as you mentioned, the problems in Rodney and Cassandra's relationship. I don't think that they go deep enough to really give us any actual depth of emotion. I feel like this whole episode could have gone a lot deeper and could have really gone more into, let's say, Rodney's lack of a mother figure. That thing is mentioned literally in one scene in the club and it's thrown away completely. It's done as part of the childish side of it. And everything just feels very trivial. It feels very surface level. And therefore, it feels annoying that this whole episode is based on something that I think is very trivial. And this continues on for the rest of series 7, in my opinion, which is why I don't enjoy Rodney and Cassandra's marital issues, because I just think they are only skin deep. There's nothing there for me to really empathize with either side of the characters' points of view. So, and I mentioned repetitive because I feel like this episode starts with the premise. They have the argument. Okay, they have the argument. But it feels like it doesn't go anywhere after that. It feels like it just goes round and round in a circle. Nothing gets resolved. I feel like we talk to Rodney loads of times and he explains how he's feeling. And then he explains how he's feeling again in a slightly different way. And he explains how he's feeling. And it's like, we know how you're feeling. And it's the same when we finally get to hearing Cassandra's side of the story. It's so predictable what she's going to come out with, and that's exactly what she comes out with, that she's childish. This seems to be literally what the problem is that they're at the absolute core of it, they're both really immature. And honestly, I would like to explore a more adult relationship, and I think that's what we do get with Raquel and Del. Raquel and Del's relationship, I think, in this episode is explored in a more adult way. They feel like real people when they talk to each other. Cassandra and Rodney, they don't feel like actual adults who've gotten married. They feel like two kids. They feel like two teenagers in a relationship. And I know that that's the point, but it doesn't make sense to me because when we saw them dating in series 6, they were nothing like this. So, yeah, that's my rant.
Yeah, it was pretty unfortunate actually that Heather ended up getting this one for the episode breakdown, I think, because I knew from the very beginning that you didn't like this episode. Even before hearing your ranking, I was like, I know Heather has this one low. It's almost in your bottom 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's long as well, like an hour and a quarter. So
it's long.
The problem, like, I wonder if we could just discuss real briefly about that. How do we think this episode would have been if it had just been first episode of series 7 and it wasn't an hour and a quarter? Because I agree with you. I think you can feel it being stretched out. It's dragged out. It's literally been dragged out at the request of the BBC. But I wonder if John Sullivan obviously had a script. He had a 50-minute script and he was told to add 25 minutes to it. So what do you think? Where do you think he dragged it out? I'm guessing the beginning part with all the stuff at the factory was dragged out. It was padded. And then they probably just made some of the other scenes longer. They were probably like, okay, instead of having just a 5-minute scene here, how about we make it 20 minutes and we do more talking? Like, yeah.
I think that's something I mentioned to you when I was writing the episode breakdown, is that it felt like the scenes were really long, particularly the scene in the club is really long, and the scene with Tanya. When Rodney's telling them that he's going out with another woman. Mm-hmm. These scenes felt quite long to me when I was doing the episode breakdown, and I don't think that's ever a good sign, but particularly the club scene. But I'll come to that a bit more later. So I think that this episode could have been salvaged with that extra 25 minutes if John Sullivan had just been like, okay, we've got a really heavy drama sort of subject matter, or at least this is what he probably thought. I disagree, but we've got this heavy subject matter, so let's put more jokes in and let's have some funny situations around this subject matter.
Yeah.
I think that would have been better, but what I feel like he actually did in this episode is he tried to make the subject matter that was supposed to be serious funny, and I don't think that worked. I think that missed the point of the episode, in my opinion, or what the reason he was writing the episode, the reason he wanted to take the audience on this journey.
Yeah. I mean, I also think, because like I said just in the trivia, 3 days of studio shooting is probably the longest we've ever had. I don't believe I've ever seen another episode get 3 days of studio. They always get 2.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, wouldn't it have been nice if in the middle of this episode we had like a Christmas party at the Nag's Head or something and we saw everybody?
Yes, because so you mentioned it's Christmas, right?
Well, it was aired at Christmas, but there's no mention of Christmas in this episode, right?
There's one mention of Christmas, but I'll mention it.
Oh, there
later.
is?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was supposed to be Christmas. But the problem with having a Christmas party at the Nag's Head is you would have had to do the Nag's Head studio, which they obviously hadn't set up because they didn't do any shots in the Nag's Head. They would have had to bring in all the cast. They would have had to do extra rehearsals and all of that. So it's not that simple for us to just be like, yeah, why couldn't they just have a scene in the Nag's Head? That's a massive deal. But I do think if they had a nice breakup scene in the middle of this episode with Trigger and Boise and Marlene and Denzel and Mike,
yes,
this episode might have felt a bit more warm. I think the one thing that I note that I'm not a huge fan about is the fact that it doesn't have the Nag's Head and it doesn't have any side characters.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to the club scene. This is the first episode. Well, we said during the Jolly Boys outing, that's it. Jevon is done now because Jevon's gone off to start his career in EastEnders.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be in the club scene, or at least it was written to be Mickey and Jevon, because that makes sense, totally.
Yes.
But then Chris was brought in. So it feels almost like everyone was away doing something else and they didn't have time for this episode. It's weird. It's like, oh, this episode just kind of happened over Christmas while no one was available, which isn't even true because we'll go through the scenes and we'll see. They filmed a lot of the scenes for this on the same day they filmed scenes for other parts of Series 7. So the actors were around on the location, but they just didn't put any of them in this episode. So I think a huge problem of this episode is the fact that he was told, John Sullivan was asked by the BBC to drag it out.
Yeah.
That's not his fault.
Well, no, it's like the opposite problem than he used to have because they used to tell him to cut shit out and shorten the episodes, and it's just like now he's being asked to drag it out.
Poor John Sullivan. Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. If there was, let's say, a scene in the Nag's Head where Rodney and Cassandra got into a fight in front of all the side characters, that could have been very funny. Because we'd have had multiple sort of perspectives of all the side characters. We'd have probably had a great one-liner from Trigger, from Boise, a bit of sympathy from Marlene with Cassandra. Like it would have been, we could have even sort of, compared it to Boise and Marlene's marriage. There would have been some commentary on that because they're the only other couple I can think that are married, that we see both of them. So there's so many things that could have happened, and arguably those conversations are in Series 7. I just think about that conversation that Del has with Mike and is it Mike and Trigger when he's like, why do women always want to know what time you got home? Like this conversation, this is like the sort of thing they could have put in this episode.
That's Fatal Extraction.
Sorry, yeah, that's because he's having a row with Raquel.
Yeah.
So like these conversations, this commentary from the side characters on relationships, I think could have been a really big help in bringing this episode back to life a little bit, because it just feels like it kind of dies. Apart from the one bit of this episode that I absolutely love, and you can probably guess which part that is, that I think is probably one of my most favourite Only Fools and Horses moments, actually, which is why it pains me to put this episode so low in my rankings. But yeah, it's a shame. I think it was like you say, a combination of things that just sort of failed the episode in the end for me.
Yeah, and you can't deny that the overall running theme of this episode for Del and Rodney is the relationship development with their partners, which I know from reading every kind of fan opinion that you can, reviews, Reddit, everything. A lot of fans are not a fan of this era of relationship development and partners being permanent cast members. I have mixed opinions on it. I think there are good episodes from either side, and I'm probably pretty neutral. I like both eras. But there are a lot of people that feel it falls off after the relationship era. And this episode is the absolute epitome of the relationship era. It's only about Del and Raquel and Rodney and Cassandra. That's all it's about. And mostly Rodney and Cassandra. That's probably another big factor. Yeah. Yeah,
I agree. And again, it's not done in a funny way. That's the problem, isn't it, for me? Like, anyway, that it's not this is not funny. I think that's the reason that I don't appreciate this episode as much. Again, it's not that I hate the emotional stuff. I really love it in some episodes. Like I said, Strained Relations, great episode. The Rodney and Cassandra's miscarriage, in Modern Men, I think is really interesting and really well done. But this episode, again, for me, it just felt so shallow that's why I don't think it worked.
I agree, and I do think, for me, I like Del and Raquel's relationship a lot more, or because I think Nick Lyndhurst is incredible, but I don't feel like it's Gwyneth Strong's fault. I don't think she's given emotional stuff, probably until Modern Men. Most of her stuff is very shallow, whereas Chesapeake Jones is given a lot more to work with.
Yes.
In Series 7, so I don't think it's the fault of the actors. I know a lot of people have been critical of Gwyneth Strong, particularly in this episode, but I do think it's more the way her character was written, and that's not a criticism of John Sullivan. I just don't think it goes too deep.
Yeah.
To be honest, it doesn't give her enough to work with.
Yeah, I have a lot of notes about that scene where she has the tantrums and stuff.
Let's just get into the episode, because we're going to talk forever, but we haven't even started.
Haven't even started yet, bruv. All right, yes, let's do it.
So let's go ahead and start the episode breakdown.
So we begin in a shopping centre, and this is actually a location that I don't think we've seen before. So Albert and Del are coming up the escalator, and Albert is complaining that he now has to do Rodney's lookout job for Trotter's independent traders.
I fought with this country. Did ya? How'd you get on?
Albert asks Del why they are waiting to start selling, and Del says he's waiting for the security people to change shifts so he can start. And we've never actually seen Del sell in a shopping mall before, right?
What about healthy competition? He's outside a mall.
Outside, yes, but never like inside a big shopping centre.
No.
And I mean, the last time we saw Del selling in the market is the Jolly Boys outing, but I feel like we did see a lot less of Del's market trading sort of life in Series 6.
I agree. We didn't see much in the market at all. I actually think that the Jolly Boys outing might have been, and I know it's not in Series 6, but it's the only part in Series 6 where we see the market at all, isn't it?
I think, I think it might be. That's true, yeah. So obviously it's interesting because the premise of the show was sort of based on the market trader thing, and we are definitely moving away from that when we get to this era of Only Fools and Horses.
Yeah.
So Del and Albert make their way to a bench, with Albert carrying the suitcase, of course.
Aww.
And Albert asks Del if he has any hooky gear inside of the suitcase. And Del acts shocked and says that he doesn't get involved with things like that now that he's with Raquel. So this is an indication to the audience that Del is leaving his old ways behind and changing to suit his new lifestyle, at least in theory. Of course, we know that isn't really true.
Yeah, thank goodness.
But his heart is in the right place. Pity about his brain. Quote from the episode. So Albert asks Del what he's worried about.
Tell you what I am worried about. I'm an unlicensed trader, aren't I, eh? Many, many moons ago, a local magistrate and I had a sort of misunderstanding. And he took the law in his own hands and banned every council in London from issuing me with a trader's licence. So now I've got to flog where and when I can.
Apologies, anyone, if you can hear the rain in the background, because it's really, really loud. It's chucking it down in Hong Kong. We're having thunderstorms at the moment.
I think that the weather feels the same way about this episode as Heather.
True. So I feel like this is the first time we've actually had any real explanation about why Del has to sell on street corners and cannot set up a shop legitimately.
Yeah, it's a very interesting little addition. I don't feel like it was needed. We've never really wondered why. We've always just thought he's illegal, he can't do. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you ask the question, why can't he get a license? He's always calling himself an unlicensed trader. But
yeah.
I have no idea what the procedure is. And we know he's been in court a few times for fly pitching. So maybe he's exempt from being allowed for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's one of the things John Sullivan added because he had time.
Maybe, yeah. I don't really understand the procedure, so I guess I can't comment much on that.
Yeah. Well, Albert asks if he can get something to eat, and Del sends him to get some burgers for them. So this scene actually goes back and forth between the office, Rodney's office, and the shopping centre. So I think we can just do notes after each of the little scenes. So any notes on that short beginning scene, dude?
Let's break the episode up as much as we can because some of the other scenes later on are very long.
Yeah.
The only notes I had for this little snippet is, first of all, I believe the title origin is based on Kathy Come Home.
Yes, that sounds right.
Which is mentioned in Video Nasty.
Lassie Come Home.
Well, they mention both, don't they? Because Rodney says it doesn't have the cultural impact of Kathy Come Home, and then Del says it doesn't have the cultural impact of Lassie Come Home.
Yeah.
I always thought Kathy Come Home was a movie. I hate to have my knowledge like pushed again like this, but I looked it up and it says it's a 1966 BBC television play about homelessness, written by Jeremy Sanford, produced by Tony Garner and directed by Ken Loach. and considered, I guess, historically one of the best things ever made for TV. Yeah. I went on the Wikipedia page and looked it up, and I was like, I always thought it was a movie, or maybe I thought it was a musical. I'm not sure what I thought it was, but anyway.
I think I thought it was a movie.
Yeah, I learned something new anyway. This was actually filmed on the first floor of the Broadwalk Shopping Centre in Bristol. The script just says the Arndale Centre. I think we've discussed this before.
Yeah, that multiple places are called the Arndale Centre. Yes, we did.
Yeah, so they use this specific shopping centre in Bristol, and I believe you can still go here because it's still open. And the scenes were shot on Thursday, the 11th of October, 1990. I wrote here that it's the first time we've seen him selling in a location like this.
Yeah.
I did note healthy competition, but yeah, like you said, that's a doorway of a mall, and then he runs through the mall to escape the gendarmes.
Yes.
And the topical reference here regarding mad cow disease.
Say I caught mad cow disease.
The running theme of people being wary of British beef comes back in the later trilogy episodes, if I remember correctly. Trigger mentions being wary of eating British beef.
Oh no, Trigger says he's been eating British beef all his life and it's never done him any harm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's in one of the late trilogy episodes.
Yes.
But yeah, I wasn't exactly sure because I do remember this happening in my lifetime. So all I pulled out of the news was the 90s was the time that there was the most widespread fear among the public. It's not that it hadn't happened before that. It's just this is when it was being highlighted a lot to the public. So the common references to it throughout the show are very topical because it would be the sort of thing that was in the paper a lot at this time. So that was all I wrote for that scene. We can move on if you like.
Okay, so now we go to Rodney's office, and it looks very different to the office that we saw him inhabit in the Jolly Boys outing. He now has a private office and a secretary. So Rodney opens his briefcase to eat his lunch at the beginning of the scene, and he takes out a rather sorry-looking sandwich. Although, given some of the crap that we've seen the Trotters eat in the past, I doubt that this was really that bad, especially if he's very hungry. Because, you know, they're used to living on takeaways and greasy food and everything. I mean, I've seen worse sandwiches. So I'm assuming that we're supposed to think that Cassandra has made this sandwich for Rodney and, like, she's done a bad job, or do we think that Rodney was forced to make his own sandwich because Cassandra doesn't do that for him and that's why it looks so unappetizing? I wasn't really sure.
I think the latter. Rodney made his own sorry-looking sandwich because Cassandra doesn't cook for him, and we know that.
Right, okay, yeah. I wasn't sure if that was like the point, if it's like, oh, Cassandra's a terrible wife and she makes rubbish sandwiches for him, or if he has a terrible wife who doesn't make him food, therefore he has to do it himself. Either way, he has a terrible wife. I think that's the point, right? So for some reason, Rodney chucks the sandwich straight in the bin. And honestly, I think I would have kept hold of it until I was certain that like there was nothing else
right
that I could eat. Like, it just seems a bit of a silly thing to do, to just throw it away. But anyway, he buzzes for his assistant, Michelle, eventually needing to go over to her and take off her headphones in order to get her attention. And I don't know if you noticed this too, but I feel like there was like such a trope of terrible assistants and secretaries in TV shows around this time. Like, I always thought, how did they stay employed if they were like so bad? I can't think of another example off the top of my head right now, but I feel like I've seen this so many times in so many different shows.
I don't know. Like they definitely wouldn't be able to hold on to their jobs nowadays, let's put it that way. But we are looking at a completely different era. I think like there's always this insinuation that it's such a menial job that they don't have to do anything anyway. They just sit there.
Yeah.
I think in this case, obviously the joke is Rodney, again, he never gets to feel important or powerful, and she's supposed to be somebody who is his subordinate, and she still doesn't take him seriously.
Yeah, I wrote a note about that. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's probably what it is as well. So Rodney asks her if she's going to the hamburger bar in the precinct for her lunch, and she says that she's not, which prompts Rodney to become extremely condescending.
Michelle, you're new here, and I don't think you've fully got the gist of my question. You see, I am the head of the computer section, and you are the secretary to the head of the computer section. So when the head of the computer section asks the secretary to the head of the computer section whether she is going to the hamburger bar in the precinct, what the head of the computer section is saying is go to the hamburger bar in the precinct during your lunch hour because the head of the computer section is starving bloody hungry.
So I'm assuming that the burger bar Rodney wanted a burger from is the same one that Del and Alva are eating burgers from. I thought if that's like correct, that's a nice little link between the two scenes. I just thought of that while I was doing the episode breakdown.
Yeah.
Because they're in the precinct, right?
I never thought of that, but yeah, good point.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So Michelle points out that if Rodney were to have a big greasy hamburger, then the office would be very smelly when the important client comes in later. So clearly she has a point because Rodney backs off straight away. I've got to say, there must have been like so many other types of food that she could have gone out and got for him that didn't smell bad. So she's a terrible secretary because she didn't suggest any other type of food she could pick up for him. But Rodney also didn't ask for any other types of food. And to touch on the point you said earlier, I'm guessing this exchange is to show us a glimpse of how Rodney feels emasculated at work as well as at home. So I'm glad you said that because I wasn't sure if I was reading too much into it.
No, I mean, I think it's definitely true. You can explore all the different ways that Rodney interacts with different women and different people in his life to see that it isn't just an issue with Cassandra. This is his issue.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And it probably doesn't help because this is like the me, myself, and Irene thing. Like, if he were getting a lot of respect at work and everyone was like, oh, he's like the boss, the big boss, he wouldn't feel as bad around Cassandra. A lot of the time, it's things lacking in other areas of your life that end up ruining or causing problems in your relationship.
Yeah.
So we need to see that he's still not that good at work or not that respected at work to understand why he thinks Cassandra's work progression is such a threat to his masculinity.
Sorry, you just mentioned me, myself, and Irene. All I can think of now is, what are you staring at, fucker?
Yeah. Sorry.
I love it. So I think it's really funny that she doesn't even attempt to pretend that she's working. She's literally like sitting there filing her nails, reading a magazine and listening to music when she's at work. So Rodney notices out of the window that Raquel is walking by and she's carrying a load of shopping bags back to the flat. So Rodney calls to her from out the window and he invites her inside for a coffee and then offers her a lift back to the flat after she's done. But of course, he has an ulterior motive.
She's got bags of food. Mugger.
So, any notes on that scene, dude?
Yeah, so first little note here, the reason that it looks different from the cubicle is because it's an entirely different location. So this was actually a printing workshop. It's kind of obvious. It's not like they built this set. So they used a printing workshop called Gemini Graphics and Print Limited, which was on well, might still be, probably not. It was on York Street in St. Werburgh's. So they just changed the sign on the outside of the building to say Parry Graphics and Print Limited, and this was done by the graphic designer Andrew Smee, and they needed 4 print workers to be in the shot, and they were actually employees of the Gemini Graphics and Print Limited, which I think was pretty cool. Imagine if they were using your workplace to shoot Only Fools and Horses and you got to be in the scene doing your job. I think that'd be quite cool.
I'd be so happy.
And just, I'll add this note in now. I think I put it in one of the later snippets, but I'll put it in now. All of the print work shots, including those of the chance of a lunchtime, were all shot on the same day. So I believe they only had one day in this print workshop. So any shots you see of the print workshop were all shot on the same day. Yes, Sunday, October 14th, 1990. But I think that includes all the office scenes. It doesn't say that, but I'm pretty sure it includes all the office scenes because this office is not a set, it's an office.
Yeah. I mean, the office could be anywhere, but obviously the scene where Raquel is walking with Rodney, you'd need an actual print workshop to film that.
And that was shot on this day, so I'm guessing they all were. It's just a lot of the conversation scenes between Rodney and Raquel are quite long, so it's surprising that they're all done on one day. But I wrote the Walkman that Michelle is wearing is very 80s.
Yes. Michelle is very 80s, isn't she?
Yeah. So I wrote Michelle was played by Paula Ann Bland, who some people may know from playing Claire Scott in Grange Hill. She was in Grange Hill for 4 years, 1981 to 1985. She was also in an episode of Waiting for God, which is the show that Stephen from the Jolly Boys Outing is in.
Right.
And that was all the notes I had for that little section.
Okay, cool. So now we go back to the shopping centre and Dell is finishing his burger. It looks like Albert has already finished eating, so I wonder what he ate since he didn't want to have a burger.
Right.
Or maybe Dell just convinced him to have one in the end. I don't know. So Albert is ready to start selling and Dell says that he's not. And then Dell gives quite an elaborate speech about how important timing is and how he's a lion and the shoppers are antelope and he's waiting to pounce upon them. And this turns out to be a setup for a during the war joke.
I instinctively know the optimum moment in which to make my move. And then, and only then, will I strike.
Yeah. During the war.
Here we go then.
So actually there's 2 during the war jokes like this in this episode, which is interesting because we usually just get one per episode. Del actually throws away about half a burger here from the looks of it, so he really didn't want to hear Albert's story, because I can't imagine Del throwing food away. Del sends Albert to his lookout position, and then we find out what Del is selling. It's dolls, but not the blow-up kind. Although, as soon as I saw these dolls, I just thought of that story in Danger UXD with the dolls, with the boss eyes.
Right, yeah.
Because I'd imagine these dolls look a lot like them. So, again, very short scene. Any notes on that scene, dude?
Well, I didn't write any down, but I do have two things to say right now. One of them is, one of my pet hates is wasting food. So you've got Rodney throwing away an entire sandwich. You've got Del throwing away an entire burger. I hate that. I just want to say it, just to get it off my chest. The second
Well, to be fair, Rodney does eat one bite of his sandwich later.
That's true, yeah. Grab your sandwich out the bin. One of our listeners, Lucy Evans, actually emailed us to point out to us that Albert says during the war, endanger UXD.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't correct that in our series wrap because, first of all, I think we'd already recorded it by the time
we had
Lucy emailed us, but also because we don't usually address the last special because we hadn't released it in full. And we could talk about it in the future. In fact, I've been thinking about, future episodes where we go through loads of the things we haven't addressed, corrections and stuff. Yeah. But this is a pretty big one because we made a really big deal about during the war being said for the first time in Jolly Boy's outing. And I think it might be because it was done in a more, this is a classic Albert line way, whereas it was a little bit throwaway in the Danger UXD, but Lucy is completely right. He does say it.
Yeah, it's in the Dirty Barry's, isn't it?
Yeah, he says it outside Dirty Barry's. And that technically that's the first time, yes. So I'd like to correct that right now, just since we are focusing again on during the war related gags.
Yeah, I also think it's because it's said almost as a complete sentence. The during the war gag later on is like during the war and then there's a space. Whereas I think this particular sentence, if I'm thinking about the correct bit, is during the war I was quite a celebrity around these parts.
That's right, yeah.
So it's like done as like a whole sentence. I think that's probably another reason that I didn't really think of it as like during the war as like its own statement.
Yeah, that's probably why we glazed over it. But honestly, that was the first time that he says it in that way. So yeah,
yes,
that's a great catch there by Lucy.
Yeah, really good catch. Especially because it's my favourite episode. Oh, the shame.
Yeah, I know, right? Whatever. Nobody's perfect.
So now we go back to Rodney's office again, where he's having a coffee and a chat with Raquel. I feel like even though we're only like 6 minutes into the episode at this point, that things are already more serious in tone and less playful than previous episodes. To me, this almost feels like more of a soap opera, I guess. I can't really explain. There's just a difference in tone. Do you know what I mean, dude?
Yeah, and I think also it all starting in location, which I know the Jolly Boys outing did too, but you had like a busy, crowded market scene, a bit lively.
Yeah.
All the location scenes with the mall and back to the office and the mall, back to the office. It feels a little bit more like, like an episode of Coronation Street or something rather than a comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably why. So we find out a few things here. First of all, we have confirmation that Raquel is now living with Del. Although Rodney is hesitant about the way that he words that, saying that she's staying with Del and Albert. I assume that's because it was taboo for a woman to be living with a man out of wedlock at this point.
I don't know, but they've had references in the past to different, like Del living with women and Mickey Pierce living with women. I didn't think it was necessarily taboo, but you do see that Raquel feels uncomfortable about people talking about their relationship and whether she's sleeping with Del and stuff. So
yeah, that part I understand, but like, what is the difference really between saying staying with and living with?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's probably just a cultural times thing, yeah.
Yeah, it must be. So we find out also that Raquel was actually in America recently. So it seems that she went off to work in America since she started dating Del again. Which is interesting when you think about what happens in Chance of a Lunchtime, because Del, like the whole conflict there is that Del is apprehensive about her going on a tour around the UK to schools. But then he's fine with her going off to America, it would seem. And doing a tour all down the East Coast. I don't know, maybe he wasn't okay with it, but yeah, it's interesting that he's not okay with her going away for a job in just like a couple of episodes' time.
Yeah, so in the Jolly Boys outing, if I'm correct, doesn't she say that her contract is up soon with the Great Raimondo, and then she doesn't know where she's going to go.
Yeah.
And Del says, Peckham. So I always thought that until I watched this episode in more detail, that she finished her contract at the Mardi Gras and came straight to Peckham. But then I forgot. And then I listened to this and I was like, so she didn't do that. She actually went off on tour in America. So yeah, did Del feel threatened because she didn't actually come straight back? Because we could see at the end of the Jolly Boys outing that they are seeing each other. He's going down to Margate with the van.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very weird to think, I mean, I guess it's kind of nice because they do give Raquel that kind of worldly, like, her time to go off and travel and enjoy herself a little bit. And then they make this huge deal that she, like, was on tour and thought, I want to come back to Del, which is very sweet.
Yeah.
But yes, it's an interesting little addition thrown in here. And then they have lots of references to Raquel has been to America. Like, she had that experience. So yeah. She decided afterwards, I guess, to do that after her time at the Mardi Gras.
Yeah, I mean, I also assumed that John Sullivan maybe already had an inkling that he was going to do Miami twice at this point, because Raquel happens to go all down the East Coast, like Boise and Marlene do, and actually specifically mentions Miami, that she went to Miami in this episode as well. So
he does, but he also says that she was in New Orleans, which is absolutely not in any way on the East Coast. I also think, isn't it interesting that she was in New Orleans, which is where they have Mardi Gras, and that was the name of the club that she worked at. I thought that was an interesting link.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting.
I spent my 40th birthday in New Orleans.
Yeah. I'd love to go to New Orleans, maybe one day.
I don't know if you would. It's very hot.
Well, it can't be hotter than Hong Kong.
That's true.
It's the humidity that's a killer in Hong Kong.
That's what it is in New Orleans.
Yeah, so similar probably.
This is something I thought was interesting about New Orleans, is they have graveyards. They can't bury people the same way they do because they rise to the ground.
Well, it has got a pretty spooky history, hasn't it, New Orleans?
I did a ghost tour, yeah. It's very interesting. Actually, I do think, you would like New Orleans because the ghost tours are very interesting.
Well, I love Live and Let Die. It's one of my favourite Bond movies, and that's set in New Orleans. So
that's probably why John Sullivan liked New Orleans. He loved the Bond movies.
Oh yeah, of course he does. Always names his episodes after them.
Such a tangent. Let's get back to the scene.
So Raquel, after speaking about her trip to America, says this.
Then suddenly I got this sort of urge to come home.
To Del?
Yes, to Del.
Well, I won't come home from New Orleans to see Del. I won't come home from a New Forest to see Del.
So we can see now that Raquel and Del are going strong here, and she seems very smitten with him. The way she speaks about him, her mannerisms, the way her face kind of lights up when she's speaking about him. Obviously, their relationship is very healthy at this point. So Rodney asks how Del is keeping, which kind of implies to me that he hasn't seen him for a little bit of time. Maybe a few weeks, maybe a month, I don't know. Because you wouldn't need to ask that if you saw him recently, right?
Yeah.
So Raquel explains that he seems quieter than when she first met him, which Rodney disputes. And this topic of conversation is used as a way to do our favourite type of cutscene.
Yeah.
No, he has changed. Not so loud and brash as he used to be.
And we cut to Del being loud and brash in the shopping centre in the next scene. So any notes on that scene, dude?
No, I already said both my notes.
Okay, cool. So now we go back to the shopping centre, as I said, Del being loud and brash, and Del is selling, and there is a giant crowd around his suitcase. Now, my first question, of course, is that if this is illegal, how have none of the shops around Del reported him? Like, I know Del said that the security guards are changing shifts, so that's why there's no security guards there at this moment, but how long does it take for them to change shifts? And I'd assume that a fly pitcher outside your legitimate shop would be quite a threat to your business. So I just assumed that the shop owners would report this sort of thing. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Because in shopping centres in Hong Kong, there are very strict laws about sort of booths setting up, unofficially. Even in the corridors going into the shopping malls, they're not allowed to. Hawkers, right? They're called in Hong Kong.
Yeah, it's a shame Del doesn't live here in the US because you can do whatever you want here with this stuff. I would say...
Oh, really?
This is artistic license, the same with all the times he sells in the market, because I think many times we've said he's selling in the market, he's illegally selling, and he's always got these massive crowds and he's doing this big spiel. He doesn't seem to be rushing. So again, I think this is just written for the comedy of it, because in reality, yes, there's no way he wouldn't have got busted straight away, especially with the amount of people around him. And the same thing in lots of the scenes in the market in the past.
Well, I mean, in the market, at least he blends in with his surroundings. There's so many people all crowded around, everyone's walking. This is like so obvious. It's right in the middle of the shopping centre, and the crowd is probably the biggest we've ever seen Del have, which is very interesting considering the situation, but I'll talk more about that in a moment. So we see Albert standing in the crowd, looking out, but honestly, he wouldn't be able to see anything on the other side of Del from where he's standing, so he's a bad lookout. I also found it really funny that this many people are interested in the dolls. So I think in the past we've seen Del getting a crowd around him before he actually opens the suitcase to tell them what he's selling, and then he reveals it to the crowd. But this amount of people wanting to buy Del's crappy dolls,
Well, I think the dolls and stuff very popular at this time, especially if it was supposed to be Christmas. A lot of these people might have been like, oh, I'll get that for my little granddaughter or whatever. I remember dolls like this being a big thing, and they still are now. Little girls want dolls. Not just little girls, I guess. But
so they're at least interested enough to stand there and listen to like what he's got to say about the dolls. Okay, fine. But it doesn't seem to me that there's any kids in the crowd. I think there's I spotted one baby and one toddler, but the rest are all adults. I don't know, it just seems like a really weird thing for so many people to sort of stand and listen to for such a long time.
I think they're shopping for their kids, so that was my point. It's like, this is the sort of thing I can see like grandparents and stuff buying for their kids. I remember, to be honest, I do remember our nans buying us like cheap off-brand dolls that they got at the market.
I know, they were creepy as hell, weren't
but they bought them because they were like, oh, the little kids will love these. That's a totally normal thing.
Yeah. I don't know, it just seems unfathomable to me that for so many of the things that Del's selling, he gets like maybe 15 people at the most in the crowd, but here he's got there's got to be 100 people there at least.
But again, it's for artistic license.
And even the people at the back probably can't even see what he's selling.
I think it's just supposed to show that his charisma can generate an audience, and it needs to be big to make the scene impact. That's all.
Yes, because of the surroundings. That does make sense. In the market, you only need 15 people, and it looks like you got loads of people because the market's so crowded. But in this setting, you're right. If only 15 people stood there, it would be hardly anyone.
Yeah.
So Del does his usual sales banter, and this is the one mention that it might be Christmas, because he says that he's in a festive mood.
Ah, okay. That's the one mention. No wonder I missed that.
That's literally it for the whole of the episode. I think I couldn't really see clearly in the footage, but I think you can see some Christmas trees in the background of the wide shots of the crowd. I think, but I'd have to double check because I wasn't sure.
Well, they would have had to add those in because it was October, so they would have had to put those into the mall.
So yeah, I think I saw Christmas trees in the back of the shot, but have a look and tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So I find this crowd very funny because they are especially unresponsive compared to previous scenes where we've seen Del selling to a crowd. And that's actually turned into part of the joke in the scene.
Now, I'm not going to ask you for 10 quid. I'm not going to ask you for 8 quid. What I'm going to ask you for is £7.50. £7.50. Here it goes. Come on. First come, first served. I haven't got many. Come on. Come on. Quick. Don't tell me anything. What is the matter with you people? What is the matter? Don't you see a bargain when you see one?
I wonder if that was legit, a mistake that David Jason made on purpose, saying, "Don't you see a bargain when you see one?"
No,
or he just flubbed his lines. But
I always
brilliant.
think that
it's very funny.
I always love the way that David Jason ad-libs and makes mistakes in what he says.
Yeah,
and it always gets left in, or he does it for the live studio performances and stuff, because I feel like it's Del's motor mouth tripping over his words kind of realistic way of talking, and I think that it may be deliberate, it may not be. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's like David Jason's performance is so genuine seeming.
Agreed.
Like a real person.
Yeah, totally agree with you. It's great. So Del proceeds to shake the doll in the face of one of the audience members, and then he pulls out a baby's bottle as if from nowhere. It shows them that you can use it to feed the doll with the baby bottle.
She wets herself. She laughs. She cries. And if you keep her till she's 13, she breaks out in acne and wants to go for Brussels.
So that's a very relevant pop culture reference there.
And call back to The Unlucky Winner Is.
Yes, exactly. So finally, Del proceeds to play the lullaby that the doll sings to the crowd. At which point the crowd all begins to walk away, of course. And this reminded me of the dolls in It's Only Rock and Roll that said, "Yeah, what's up, Doc?" And it also made me think of A Touch of Glass with the cats that sang How Much Is That Doggy in the Window. I guess Del doesn't have a lot of luck with talking and singing toys. But I do have one question. Did Del not test the singing feature of the dolls when he purchased them before he decided to play it to an entire crowd?
Clearly not.
Given Del's past experience, you'd think that would have been the first thing he would have done when he collected the dolls. as he did in It's Only Rock and Roll. Remember? They're loading them into the van and he turns it upside down and he goes, nah, what's up, Dad?
But he also shrugs and puts it back in the box like it doesn't matter. I think it's a very classic thing for Del to do, yeah.
He does. But he does sound surprised when it does that in front of the crowd.
But he also
his
doesn't
face
stop
goes,
doesn't stop him trying to sell it, and then they also say in Danger UXD that all they did was keep the eyes closed to hide the boss eyes of the sleeping doll. So
yeah, that's true.
it's normal for Del to try to just cover up the defect with his hooky gear.
It is.
Yeah.
I just got the impression that Del was not aware of the problem until he pressed that button in front of the crowd for this one. That's why I'm wondering. But anyway, yeah, that's all I had for that scene. Any notes, dude?
Yeah, so there's an interesting reference here in the script. It says the script says here that we hear a robotic voice box. It sounds like a small child singing a Chinese lullaby. And then there is a line cut out here in the script where Del tries to improvise and says, and they can help your child learn a foreign language. Very important with 1992 approaching. All right, give me a fiver. Give me a fiver. And then the crowd disperses and he just looks at the doll and says, big mouth.
So the scene ended differently in the original script.
What does he mean by very important with 1992 approaching? Maybe that line was cut because no one would understand it, or maybe I just don't understand. Was something big coming in 1992 that we knew about in 1990? Learning a foreign language?
Oh God, you're asking me, dude.
Yeah.
I was 5. I don't got a clue.
I don't know, and I didn't look it up, so go ahead and slam me in the comments for not knowing something huge about 1992. Also, we do find out later that the dolls are Korean, right? So it says here that they're singing a Chinese lullaby. Probably more likely they're singing a Korean lullaby.
Well, to be fair, a lot of stuff in Asia is produced by China, but I actually don't know if that was the case in the 90s. I guess it probably was.
Yeah, but he says Korean rubbish or something later, so I would expect that maybe Korean.
Yeah, he does. But yeah, I mean, even though it's Korean, it probably made in China still in a factory, you know.
Yeah, and that was
This
it.
always
That was all I
happens.
had for that scene.
Okay, cool. So now we go back to Rodney's office, and Raquel and Rodney are still doing their inane small talk, I wrote.
Oh, I actually don't think it's that inane. Like, I know you don't like a lot of this, but I do think a lot of the dialogue in this scene is quite nice character development between Rodney and Raquel. I'll just say that before you start.
Well, yes, I will say that Rodney and Raquel's relationship develops here. And we at least see that Rodney has a lot of respect for her, because we haven't seen him talk to her since dates. Since Jolly Boy's outing. But even then, it was very small amount of talking that he did with Raquel. It was more with Del and Raquel with Del. So,
and this is the first time we've seen them talk just one-on-one. And I do think, Raquel could have been a nice mentor for Rodney, as also having been through her marriage broke up and all.
I mentioned that line in this scene. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well, actually, I said that I think the dialogue gets less inane now. So I said Raquel decides to change the subject.
So, how are things with you and Cassandra?
What do you mean?
I mean, are you both well?
Yeah, great.
Cassandra's still studying hard for promotion.
Yes, she's still a very ambitious lady.
So, married life suits you?
Yeah. Go on then, what's Del been saying?
So now we get filled in about what's been going on with Rodney and Cassandra since the Jolly Boys outing. And Raquel mentions the events of the Jolly Boys outing where Rodney punched Stephen and Cassandra chucked him out. Then another incident is mentioned where Cassandra went back to her parents, and we don't really find out what that was about necessarily. So Raquel gives Rodney some advice from the perspective of someone who has had a marriage breakup before.
A lot of people think a marriage comes complete with gift wrapping. But it doesn't. It comes in kit form. You got to work at it.
And before Rodney can respond, Alan comes into the room.
I've just noticed we're doing more of this cheap printing for Del. We're not running a charity organisation.
I can't remember if we established that Del was having the cheap printing done by Alan's company before this.
I can't remember either. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's the first time it's mentioned, right? Because I get confused because I know in Series 7 it's mentioned again. But you could imagine Del taking liberties with this kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
I think it mentions in another episode that he's passing the same service on to Boise as well.
Yeah, that sky's the limit.
So, yeah, Del taking the piss, basically. He gets offered something, out of being family, and then he, milks it for all it's worth. That sounds like Del. So Rodney actually introduces Alan and Raquel to each other here because they haven't met before. And Rodney goes to say that Del and Raquel are living together, but again, he stops himself. And Alan says that Del's already mentioned Raquel to him and he would love it if they all go out for dinner sometime. So it seems that Alan is actually happy to spend time with Del. I think I mentioned in the Jolly Boys outing that it felt like Alan sort of had more negative feelings towards Del now, or he kind of got annoyed with Del, but it actually seems that he's fine if he's inviting them to have dinner together. So before Alan leaves, he reminds Rodney one more time.
Just try and keep a closer eye on things, Rodney. This cheap printing is very good for some people. Unfortunately, it's not for us.
So we can see the power dynamic here between Rodney and Alan, and it does seem that Alan is maybe getting a little bit frustrated with Rodney's standard of work. I don't know, it's the line, just try to keep a closer eye on things. I feel like that's not just about the printing. I could be looking into that a bit too deeply, but I don't know. I just feel like you just say, this cheap printing is very good for some people. You wouldn't say, try to keep a closer eye on things.
Yeah, I think him coming in and snapping at Rodney, which we've never really seen before, shows again another
No.
Rodney's downtrodden. Again, that's all I thought.
Yeah.
It's weird that he came in and said something about Del in front of Raquel, like, as well. I always think that was a bit strange. But...
Yeah, I agree with you. The first time makes sense because he didn't know who she was, but at the end,
yeah,
sort of saying it again in front of her, I agree, is a bit like, all right, do you want her to pass this on to Del as well?
Also, yeah, if I were her, I would have been like, oh, I'll say something to him. Like, I would have spoken up. But yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, I just think it's interesting choice to have him come in and just be kind of cranky and then leave. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the only time we see him in the whole episode. So Alan also mentions that he's going to a Chinese restaurant, and we know that Rodney is still very hungry at this point.
Yeah.
So all of this is done to add to Rodney's hunger and to make him feel even more hungry, because of course when people talk about food and you're already hungry, it's terrible. That's technically the end of this scene in the office, so did you want to say any of your notes before we go to the printing room, dude?
Yeah, I did split this into two, but I have already said some of what I wanted to say, which was I do actually like the scene. I like the dynamic here between Rodney and Raquel because I like the fact that Raquel could be some sort of advice source for Rodney because she's been through. You also see Raquel is a very level-headed person here and someone who's sympathetic to marriage troubles. I really like John Sullivan's observation here of marriage that he uses Raquel to convey. The idea of it coming in kit form is actually, you know, if you want to argue about John Sullivan not being able to write women well or not understanding marriage, this is a sign that he does write women well, at least now. That Raquel saying that, because a lot of people do think, oh, you get married, everything will be fine, but it isn't that like that at all. You do have to be able to communicate and grow as a couple. You can't just expect everything to be fine just because you're in love. Yeah. I like that he's not sugarcoating a serious issue here. He's showing that it isn't something immediately everything's perfect just because they thought they were in love when they got married. Now, I know that it's not until the next scene that they lay out the timeline, but I'll just pop it in here. This episode was supposed to take place 18 months after the wedding. Yeah. We can ignore the fact that the Jolly Boys outing accidentally happened in the summer. It's supposed to be 18 months after. And it says here that Raquel has only been back for a couple of weeks. So that's just a little bit of timeline addition here. Yeah, that was all the notes I had. I've said everything else.
Okay, cool. So now we go to leaving the office and we're downstairs at Alan's printing business. So as you mentioned before, walking through the factory floor. And Raquel is walking ahead and Rodney's following her down the stairs, looking inside her shopping bags. So Raquel invites him for dinner and she can't seem to stop talking about food in general, actually, which is amplifying Rodney's hunger.
That's always what happens, yeah. Whenever you're hungry, everyone always talks about food. Yeah.
So actually, Rodney does decline to go for dinner for some reason. I'm not sure why in this moment that you would, because if you're as hungry as he seems to be, you'd probably just say yes the second you heard dinner. But I guess he doesn't really want to go for dinner with Del and Raquel for some reason. So Raquel leaves and Rodney was actually unable to MAGA for any food. So he's left thinking about all of the things she just spoke about.
Roast chicken and all the trimmings.
At which point he dashes back up to the office and fishes the sandwich that he chucked away earlier out of the bin. Now, the sandwich has a huge big ink stain on it.
Yeah.
When Rodney threw that sandwich away earlier, though, it was in a bag. So I'm not sure how it got in this condition. And I always wondered when I was a kid, and I wondered again when I watched this back for this episode breakdown, why did it take him so long to find the sandwich in that bin? It would have been the last thing that he threw away. He looks in the bin, like there's loads of other stuff in there and he can't see the sandwich right away. And it's like, there's a pen, and the sandwich. Like, surely you would have seen it right away. I don't know.
Maybe he was throwing away loads of stuff while he was talking to Raquel. You don't know.
Maybe, but he didn't take anything else out, you know, to put it to one side like he did with the pen. So Rodney is caught by the client and his secretary, Michelle, with the bin in his hand and a bite of the ink-stained sandwich in his mouth.
Yeah, it's really gross.
Oh, it's really gross. He's even got some drool on his chin. And I would love to know how he talked his way out of this one. But we will never know because that's where the scene ends. So any notes on that scene, dude?
I didn't write this down, but I remembered. It says in the script that he tentatively takes a bite from the sandwich. So I guess this was a choice by Nick Lyndhurst to not tentatively take a bite, because it's definitely not tentative.
Oh, no, he devours that bite.
I do think it's funnier this way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I wonder what they used to make the ink sandwich mark. Maybe some food colouring, probably, just like a drop of food colouring.
I mean, he doesn't actually bite into the ink-stained part of the sandwich, so arguably they could have just used ink because he wasn't going to eat that bit.
Yeah, but there's no way, because the way that Nick Lyndhurst bites, there's no way he would have been careful enough to avoid the ink. Unless he was planning to spit it out, because we don't actually see him swallow it, so either way.
Yeah, he's got it in his mouth when he says, "Hoi." So, yeah.
I think it's really funny, to be honest, having him like holding the trash and eating the old sandwich, and then he's caught by the important client. Again, it's just another great way of showing he's not changed into this super professional high flyer. He's still Rodney.
Yes.
And yeah, he's still eating crap out of the bin, I guess. So you catch him in the dumpster in The Miracle of Peckham. It reminds me of that. It's just another embarrassing situation for Rodney, and perfectly in keeping with his character. And yeah, I think it's funny.
Yeah, agree. Okay, so now we go to Rodney and Cassandra's flat, and there is some music playing, and Cassandra switches it off just as we hear Rodney coming in the door. So Cassandra comments that Rodney's late, but they seem very pleasant towards each other at this point. Mm-hmm. And they even give each other a kiss.
Oh, sorry, it smells good. I'm starving.
I just did myself one of those ready-made meals in the microwave.
Well, I'm starving.
Rodney goes into the kitchen and looks in the microwave and in the oven, discovering that there is no food for him. Cassandra says that there's plenty in the freezer, implying that Rodney can cook something for himself. And this is where the argument begins.
What a very clean oven we've got.
Sorry?
I was just remarking how amazingly clean one can keep these new modern ovens. Especially when one never bloody cooks in them.
That remark seems to be completely ignored by Cassandra, so I'm guessing she's used to this kind of passive-aggressive sarcasm from Rodney. Mm-hmm. And we see Cassandra is packing a bag to leave, and Rodney makes another comment, getting more and more agitated.
What is it tonight? The bank's final exams? The bank's annual cheese and wine orgy? The bank's annual yoga and target practice course?
I'm playing badminton.
Oh, I see. Where?
The bank sports club.
So we can see from this short exchange that Cassandra has not cooked any food for Rodney, and she's going to be going out the moment that Rodney gets home from work. And I think we can assume that this is a common occurrence given Rodney's attitude about it. So Cassandra doesn't seem to care at all that Rodney's upset in this moment, but again, kind of says to me that this is something that has happened multiple times. Finally, Cassandra does address Rodney's mood.
Here we go again. All right, what's wrong this time?
What, with me? What could possibly be wrong with me?
If you don't stop being so childish, I swear one of these days I'll smother you with your comfort blanket.
We do get a little bit of physical comedy here when Rodney can't get the top back on the whiskey and ends up throwing it on the floor when he's proclaiming that he's not childish. And that's quite funny. Now we get what I would consider to be a little bit of sincerity from Rodney.
When are you going to realise you've got a marriage? You've got a home? You've got me?
I'll never forget that, Roddy.
I'll never see you. You just use this flat like a base camp. You zoom in and out of here like a blue bottle with the runs.
So Cassandra's reaction to this very normal request from her husband is to brush it off and make a joke about it. And I actually agree with Rodney in this moment that this is not a very nice way to deal with that, because all Rodney's really doing here is asking if he can spend time with his wife, you know?
Yeah.
So I think Cassandra's flippancy is not very kind here. What do you think about that, dude?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Rodney, just because some of Rodney's requests are childish and needy doesn't mean they're not valid. It's he is expressing here exactly what he needs and wants, which is the first step to proper communication. And Raquel discussed kit form. The first thing you do is you tell your partner what your needs are. And it doesn't matter if they are silly because you have to be honest in a relationship. And he's doing exactly that. I agree, he doesn't exactly approach the entire argument in the good way. But here, you're right. He's completely sincere and just telling his wife what he wants. And the way that she reacts to it here is not great.
Yeah, it's very flippant.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever, doesn't matter. Yeah, absolutely. So Cassandra says that she likes to keep busy. And she says that she's asked Rodney to go with her many times when she goes out, but he doesn't like going to the places that she wants to go. So Cassandra then says something that is probably quite true.
You resent me pursuing a career, don't you?
So I'm not sure if it's so much that he resents her pursuing a career, is more that Rodney doesn't like that Cassandra is more successful than he is. What do you think, dude?
I think it's both of those things, yeah, because obviously he wants her to be successful and the money is something that he would, reap the benefits of. I think it's his own insecurity of how perhaps unsuccessful he is and the fact that he sees her as this high flyer who does kind of seems to look down on the things he likes, that's the problem. They're not on the same page for some reason. They don't enjoy the same kind of social stuff. And he doesn't like any of her co-workers. And so I think he would be happy if she was successful doing something he liked and he liked all the people. Let's say she worked for Alan, she was like the manager at the factory or whatever. Maybe they would get on better. They'd have the same co-workers. They'd be working in the same kind of place. I think it's more just to do with, it was set up in the Jolly Boys outing. Yeah. She works with a bunch of yuppie idiots that he doesn't like and get along with, and he doesn't want to go to all the bank stuff. So...
Yeah, well, I mean, that leads into sort of the next thing that happens in the argument where Cassandra says that she's having to work hard to make up for lost ground and implies that it's because of Rodney punching Stephen in the nose. And we actually find out here that Rodney broke Stephen's nose.
Yeah.
I can't say I'm upset about that, to be honest.
It was a tiny hairline fracture.
Yeah, exactly. But good. I'm glad he broke the nose. So the argument continues.
It sounds like a ridiculous thing for a husband to have to say to his wife, but I would like to see more of you. The only time we're really together is when we're lying in bed.
With our backs to each other.
Yeah, well, that's only because you turned your back on me.
Well, you started it.
I did not.
Okay, honestly, this conversation is quite exhausting for the viewer, I think, at this point. They're both being so petty and childish, especially when it starts with the you started it sort of dialogue. And I know that that's probably John Sullivan's intention to show that they are immature and childish, but this kind of goes on for the rest of the episode now, and it's too much. So Rodney then complains that whenever they have social gatherings, they always have to invite Cassandra's friends, but when she points out that Mickey and Jevon and their girlfriends came round for tea, Rodney says that he apologized for that. So Rodney doesn't want his friends there either then?
I forgot. That would have been a great scene to put in this episode.
Yes. Oh my God, that would have been great.
Mickey and Javon and their girlfriends came around for tea. Would have been
yes,
so funny.
I would have watched that, definitely. Yeah, that was really funny. And then she goes on to say...
And next week you've invited your brother and Raquel round for dinner?
I've apologised for that as well.
So yeah, this dialogue for me kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. Or is it meant to sort of point out that Rodney's full of contradictions? Because he's saying, like, name one time. She names 2 times that his friends have come round or his family's come round. And then he says that he's apologised for it, implying that he didn't enjoy it. Yeah, that kind of doesn't make sense to me, that exchange there.
I was going to say that the truth is the things that Rodney enjoys, or maybe the social group, the social company he keeps, he never seems to be super excited about anyway. Like, he's always insulting, like, Mickey, but then he goes and hangs out with him and stuff. So, yes, he's embarrassed by the idea of having Mickey around Cassandra, just like that night that they met. But that's his social circle. It doesn't go outside of that. So it's true.
Yeah.
He doesn't have, again, perhaps another reason he resents Cassandra. He doesn't have what she has, a circle of people that he actually enjoys hanging out with.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I just thought it was a bit contradictory, that dialogue. So at this point, we don't know what Cassandra thinks about Raquel, but Raquel does seem like a perfectly nice woman to spend time with. And I'm assuming that the apology that Rodney made there was actually about Del more than about Raquel. But anyway.
Yeah.
So Rodney then says...
Look, Cass, we always said if we had a problem with our marriage, we would sit down and discuss it in a mature and adult way.
Fine. Let's sit down and discuss it in a mature and adult way.
And no big surprise here, they both continue to be very immature, expecting the other one to speak first and then being very passive-aggressive when they do speak to them. So Rodney admits that he came home in a mood because there was no food on the table for him. And then Cassandra makes a reference here that when I was a kid, I always assumed was referencing Goodnight, Sweetheart.
I'm supposed to be the little wife who has the dinner on the table, waiting for Roddy to come back from the time warp. This is not 1933, and the sooner you realise that, the sooner you'll stop being so bloody childish.
So when I Googled it, I saw that Goodnight, Sweetheart didn't start until 1993.
Right, we talked about that before.
So that was some pretty amazing foreshadowing there.
Yeah, maybe they got the idea from this episode.
Maybe they did. Yeah, because in that dialogue, it pretty much covers what Nick Lyndhurst will be acting in the future.
Yeah.
Although, technically, it is set during the 1939-1945 conflict with Germany.
Yeah.
And not 1933. But even so, it's pretty
close. Close, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact she says, come back from the time warp, it's like, that's exactly what Goodnight, Sweetheart is. So, yeah. So Rodney then begins saying that other women would appreciate him and they would have dinner ready for him when he came home, at which point Cassandra asks him to go and find one of these other women and to take some ketchup for his pie and chips, which he does. So Rodney storms out of the flat, walking aggressively, and he throws his bag on the floor outside of the garage. And of course, we expect to see him drive out of the garage, but he comes out on a bike instead. And what does this remind you of, dude?
Carry on camping.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
So I wrote, it reminds me of when Terry and his wife, Harriet, are leaving for the camping trip and we hear the car revving and then they come out on a tandem bike. It's a very similar setup. So I wonder if John Sullivan was a fan of the Carry On films as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I forgot because in that scene, it's obviously more comedic because you hear the engine revving and then the little bike comes out with the music. And I forgot that. I forgot that the engine revving thing was in Carry On Camping and for some reason expected it to happen in this scene. It doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
Because he doesn't start the car. Yeah.
But that is the end of the scene. So I know I went through that scene quite quickly. I'm sure you have quite a lot to say about that whole sort of argument. So yeah, any notes, dude?
I mean, I have my notes here. Yeah, I don't think I would say I have a whole lot to say, so don't worry. I said exactly the same thing as you, that they kiss at the start of the scene, and that's actually quite nice because if you remember, we talked about the Jolly Boys outing. They're not actually shown to kiss or be anywhere near each other.
Yes.
In that whole episode, they are separated by the width of the room. So Rodney comes in and they kiss, and we get that kind of idea that maybe things aren't as bad as Rodney's been saying. And I think this scene is very important because we had the entirety of the Jolly Boys outing where we didn't actually see Rodney and Cassandra argue properly. They had a little bit of a bickering on the phone.
Yes.
But we got this enormous amount of complaining from Rodney to Del that they were having relationship issues, but we didn't actually tackle any of them. So, and then we've had the beginning of this episode where Rodney's complaining to Raquel about the issues. And again, we haven't actually seen Rodney and Cassandra talk about it. So this scene is very important because it actually shows us the way that they're now communicating since they got married. And it's all over the place. It's not good. So that's the first thing I had to say. The record that she's playing is the Fergal Sharkey LP that he bought for her for the anniversary. So this is actually quite important. He mentions this in the club and he talks about the earrings as well. Again, very symbolic of the issues in their relationship because she likes this LP. She's playing it when he's not there. And later we find out she liked the earrings too. But in both cases, Rodney seems to think she doesn't like the things or she's looking down on these things that he buys for her.
Yeah.
And she doesn't. So yeah, it's subtle at this point because we don't know that he bought her that LP.
Yeah.
But if you look back, that's the LP that she's playing. So he was actually an Irish singer and environmentalist. And it's very important again because we see later that they're both very environmental kind of minded, especially in Mother Nature's Son.
Yes.
So again, another little subtle hint to the fact that that's something huge that they have in common that they never really talk about. They both have these environmental concerns.
Yeah.
It comes full circle later and is a huge foundation of things they have in common in the future, which is why they're able to get past all of this immaturity. Okay, location. The block of flats where Rodney leaves at the end of the scene was called Guild Court in Redcliffe Backs. And this is in Bristol, and it's the same location used later for all of the arguments in the street scenes. You can go here and have your pictures taken. I've definitely seen Jason from My Only Fools and Horses has images of this block of flats.
Oh, okay.
And the quick moment where Rodney rides his bike out of the garage was filmed on Tuesday, October 16th, 1990. And the car that you see in the garage which is meant to be Cassandra's car, is the same car that she's driving in The Chance of a Lunchtime when she sees Rodney with his arms around bloody Trudy.
Yeah.
and those two scenes were shot on the same day because they had that car.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting little link, and that was all I had for now.
So now we go to dinner at Nelson Mandela House. And we have our first scene in the Trotter flat. So Del and Raquel are sitting at the dining table with the lights dimmed, and there seems to be a lot of very nice food on the table. Certainly posher than what we're used to seeing in the Trotter's flat. Mm-hmm. So Del is complimenting the meal that Raquel has cooked.
I haven't had a meal like that since my dear old mum was alive.
I honestly can't imagine Del's mom used to cook meals like that, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. From everything we know about her.
She cooks nice food, I think, in Rock and Chips. And she was also very interested in, learning French, which is why Del thinks he's learning French. If I remember correctly, she's cooking, interesting things that she thinks are, French inspired and stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's me told then, yeah. Because I just assumed that their mom was, not a great cook and sort of a bit rough and ready, but that's probably just a stereotype I'm leaning into there. There's no reason that someone who's, working class can't be a great cook. I'd imagine that most working class people are actually great cooks because they don't eat out a lot, to save money. So they probably become better cooks than rich people do.
I actually think that Joan is portrayed, I've said this a few times, Joan is portrayed throughout Only Fools and Horses as being quite different to how she actually appears in Rock and Chips, but not, I always thought of her being kind of like Trudy a little bit in From the Chance of a Lunchtime.
Yeah.
I always thought she was loud, brash, but I mean, yes, that doesn't insinuate that she wasn't a good homemaker or a good cook, and I think, like you say, a lot of people like that would be great cooks, maybe not necessarily healthy food, but great cooks. Mm-hmm. And I always thought that Grandad and being a bad cook was a contradictory to how Joan used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So Del mixes up Italian and French, and then he pretends that he did it on purpose. The usual joke that we know and love. Then Raquel fetches the trifle, and Del licks the cream off her finger. And I love this part where he dips his own finger in the trifle and offers it to Raquel, but she's not looking, so he just eats it himself.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been a long time since we've seen Del in this romantic setting where we see this loved up and somewhat vulnerable side of his character. It's nice to see Del like this again because it's been a long time, and actually have someone that reciprocates as well.
Yeah, I think I was thinking this the other day when I was just watching a few of the first episodes of Series 7 to work on those scripts, is this version of Del continues throughout the whole of Series 7. I think he's very upbeat, very sweet towards Raquel, but also there's a hint of vulnerability there. But I like the way his character is in Series 7 as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Del's character is still great, and in some ways, improves as a person. And there's a few of the little bits in this episode actually that I can point to there. Mm-hmm. So Del proposes a toast to the future, and it seems that he has a very important question for Raquel.
I really do like you. Look, you don't have to answer this now if you don't want to. But I was wondering if you would, if you would.
Suddenly, Albert bursts in and the lights come on. And I find this really funny because given the setup, it doesn't look like Albert was meant to be joining them for this dinner. But we find out that Albert's beard was singed on the candle. So originally they sat down to this meal with a tablecloth and this romantic candle with Albert sitting with them. I just find that really funny. Do they have the lights dimmed as well with Albert sitting there?
It's meant to be the joke, isn't it? That it looks like it's just the two of them and then Albert was actually there. If you look, you can see his place is set and everything. But yes, I understand that's the joke.
Yeah, that's really funny. So Raquel says that Albert's dinner's in the oven, and Albert says he's going to eat his dinner in the kitchen away from the fire hazard of a candle.
Yeah.
So Del switches the lights back off and continues trying to say what he was trying to say before Albert interrupted.
You are a woman.
Thank you.
And I'm a man. Yeah? And, no man is an island. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
No.
Well, look, I just don't want to rush things, you know. But, I mean, would you? I mean, no, what I mean... would you?
And now Rodney bursts in, switching on the light and telling them that...
That was our last chance.
Good evening, Rodney.
I have never been so insulted in my life.
Well, sit down, bruv. Let me have a try.
That's a great line.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, I remember that always made me laugh as a kid as well. Albert comes back into the living room and mentions that this is the third time that Rodney and Cassandra have broken up in 18 months. So sort of going back to what Raquel was talking about in the earlier scene. So we get an indication of how long they've been married at this point, which you mentioned earlier about the 18 months. So that puts the events of the Jolly Boys outing around 6 months ago, right?
That's right, yeah. So that's what we talked about in the other scene.
Yeah.
It would make sense because that was in the summer and this is Christmas.
Raquel asks what brought this on, and Rodney happens to be holding a bottle of whiskey again when he says that Cassandra accused him of being childish. And once again, he cannot put the top back on the bottle. So I thought that was some very clever symmetry with those jokes there.
Well, tonight was the last straw.
Really? What did you do tonight? Tread on your Scalextrics?
Scalextric.
I actually really like Del's little jibes here, but of course Rodney doesn't appreciate them. So Del asks Rodney to finish his drink and he'll drive him back to Cassandra's for them to talk, but then Rodney declines, saying that he's not going back and they're finished for good. And then it looks like Del has changed his attitude slightly, because he kind of quite seriously tells Albert to get a brandy for Rodney. But then we find out he hasn't completely changed his attitude.
Rodney, you'll have to at least talk to her sooner or later. There'll be things to be discussed.
Yes, like who gets custody of Barbie and Ken?
So yeah, I find it interesting that Del is playing the role of the audience in this situation, because I think that all of us in the audience can see that these problems that Cassandra and Rodney are having are very trivial and quite juvenile. And it's interesting because I think John Sullivan, from what you've described about this episode and the way that it was written, I feel like he wanted us to take Rodney's marriage breaking up to be a serious thing. But then there's so many jokes about how ridiculous it is. It's quite a dichotomy there, I think.
Yeah, that might be one of the reasons that some people don't like it, because it is difficult to tell. It's a little difficult to tell at this stage. It's hard to tell whether he wanted it to be serious or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, these jokes about him being a child remind me of Yuppie Love when he's doing all the school jibes towards Rodney.
Yes.
If you look at it from the point of view of everyone around Rodney and Cassandra, it's very silly and petty. But then I think John Sullivan was being quite clever in that he would pull back the curtains on this childish part of it and see that there's a much deeper issue going on with Rodney. It's pretty much all Rodney's insecurities that cause this. I'm not saying Cassandra's faultless at all, but if he were comfortable with things like her going out without him, her pursuing a career, he was confident in himself, maybe they wouldn't be having these issues. Because I don't necessarily think Cassandra's doing anything wrong. Perhaps, yeah, she could spend a bit more time with him and stuff. But he wouldn't care about that if he didn't have these issues.
Yeah.
And maybe he would be more appealing to spend time with for Cassandra. I think a lot of this does stem from his childhood issues, which is pretty much the reason most people have issues in their adulthood.
Yeah.
This was way before couples therapy was very normalized like it is now.
Yeah.
They even go to a therapist, don't they, in Miami twice? And she was laughing at them. That would obviously never happen.
That's true.
So yes, I think it is a little confusing at the moment because we're like, is this a comedy marriage breakup or is this serious? Because in the next scene, it seems very serious.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, I think at this point, it's just confusing.
Yeah. And I don't think it ever really resolves sort of in this episode as to whether it's meant to be funny or it's meant to be serious.
No, it goes very back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very back and forth. And like I said, the issues that they're facing to me do not seem serious enough to break up a marriage over. They all seem very surface level to me. So Rodney says that he's staying in the flat and we see his ketchup slam down on the table, which is quite funny. And then he puts it away again straight away when Raquel and Del look confused by it. So Del asks Albert to make up a bed for Rodney on the settee. And this creates quite an awkward moment where we find out that Raquel is sleeping in Rodney's room and not with Del in his bedroom. So this prompts Del to ask for a private word with Rodney in the boardroom.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he called the kitchen in Yesterday Never Comes as well, right?
I think there's lots of times he calls it the executive boardroom or whatever. Yeah, they do that quite often.
I thought you and Raquel...
No.
What, you mean you're not...
No.
over a fortnight.
No.
That must be a record.
We find out that Del was trying to ask Raquel if she would go to bed with him or stamp his card when Rodney interrupted them. So Del tells Rodney that Raquel is a lady, and when she's ready to, she will let him know. And Rodney asks how. And then this exchange really reminded me of the conversation in the kitchen when Del is asking Rodney's advice on how to give a sign to Miranda. It's just the roles are reversed.
Perhaps you put an announcement in the Sunday Sport, eh?
Yeah.
I do love a good double take joke. Del tells Rodney that he will be sleeping on the settee for the foreseeable and think himself lucky. And Del storms out of the kitchen, leaving Rodney on his own. And Rodney says to himself that it's better than sleeping next to a pair of cold shoulders, which is... Yeah, see, that kind of line is serious. So Del goes back into the living room with Raquel and Albert, and he says he doesn't know if he's going to let Rodney stay or not. But then Albert says that he should, until Rodney comes out of the kitchen with Albert's dinner and begins eating it.
Send him back to his wife. I fought a war for you.
The scene ends with Rodney looking baffled as to what Albert's problem is. So any notes on that scene, dude?
Let's see what I have that I haven't already said. So I put Albert swigging the brandy behind the bar is really funny. I really like the fact that Albert's got this like obsession with brandy. I don't know if did you even notice that because you look confused.
I didn't notice that at all. No, I talk about it in the later scene, obviously, because it's more highlighted. I didn't notice. When is he doing that in the scene?
So basically, I think it's very I think I like the way that Del's like, Albert, brandy. Like he's taking it seriously. Okay, this is a serious situation. There's a little cut. It's very short from the table to the bar, and you see Albert's pouring a brandy for Rodney, and it cuts to him, and he takes a huge swig from the bottle.
I never noticed that.
It's really funny. I think everybody bursting into the dinner and interrupting Del and Raquel's romantic moment is again showing how hectic and busy Nelson Mandela can be. It's a little bit like the unlucky winner is scene when Rodney's trying to have his day.
Yes, I thought that too. Yeah.
And I did make a note about what you said. It's funny, Albert dining with them. Obviously, Albert still lives in the flat. He needs to have dinner. It makes sense that Raquel is cooking for all of them.
Yeah.
But it is funny. This is the first time we've seen Raquel and Albert together since she was sitting on his lap in dates in her underwear. So that's kind I feel like you always forget creepy, about that. Yeah, you always forget the way that Albert treats Raquel. You forget that that's how they first met. Like she was taking her clothes off in the pub.
Yeah.
At his birthday party. But it's never mentioned again, and I like that. I like the fact that they don't mention that. I know they have Boise make fun of Raquel's stripper past.
Yes, I was going to say Class of 62, right?
And Sky's the Limit.
No, it's Sky's the Limit. Sorry, Sky's the Limit.
Yeah, but they wouldn't ever have had Albert do that because I think that would have been creepy with him living with them.
Yes.
It says in the script, it looks romantic. Well, as romantic as you can get in Nelson Mandela House. I think that's quite an interesting little way to introduce the scene. I really find it very funny that Rodney says to Del, well, you're just going to have to tell her that I'm back now, so she's going to have to kip with you. Well, Matt,
yes,
that's
so out of order.
Bad. Imagine if you'd moved in and you were like, okay, we're taking it slow, I'll see how it goes. And then one night you're just like, sorry, you got to sleep with me because there's no bed for you.
Yeah.
That's very silly of Rodney. But again, it shows Rodney's immaturity. Del says that they've broken up more times than JR and Sue Ellen. I'm not sure if it gets much of a laugh. That is a Dallas reference to the TV show Dallas.
It doesn't get a laugh, I remember.
Again, it's Dallas and Dynasty, right? There's a lot of references in the 80s episodes to Dallas and Dynasty, which were both pretty popular. But again, aged because nowadays, I don't think you meet many people in the UK that watch those shows. So
no, it
doesn't matter. But in the time, they would have. So yeah, it's surprising that more people didn't laugh at that. And then finally, I have in French, because Del says that is je suis, je reste. That means I am, I stay. It doesn't mean really anything that he was trying to convey. But again, it doesn't matter. It's just another one of Del's funny French phrases.
Yes.
And that was pretty much all I had for that scene. But I will add now, just because we were just talking about it, that I think it's funny, but like you see later, I mean, we're going to go ahead in time here. You see this whole situation flipped later because it's Del and Raquel's marriage problems or relationship problems and Rodney giving advice or telling him, phone her, don't be so silly.
Yeah.
A lot of that, Del and Rodney's parallels is the stubbornness to just talk to them.
Yes.
We've just seen the petty, silly, immature relationship. And like you said, the repetitiveness of, well, you started it, that does continue through into series 7. There's a barrier to their communication. The problems seem kind of trivial, and if they would just talk, they could get them out of the way. And that often is a very realistic, common problem in relationships, communication issue.
Yeah.
So Del and Raquel here are sitting here just saying, go home and talk to her, and he's refusing. And that's the way that the problem is dragged out. So we can't just have him go and talk to her, because if we did, the storyline would end.
Yes.
Which I think a lot of people like you would want that to happen. And later, we can talk about that later, but I do think, yeah, if they had just rekindled because they get close to rekindling in Sky's the Limit and Chance of Lunchtime, they actually do get back together in the Chance of Lunchtime, and then it's ruined by one more small problem.
Yeah.
Maybe all of this wouldn't have been that big of a deal. It's just dragged out a little bit too long, I guess. And that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense again with the extension of the episode.
Yeah.
You know, for all we know, the original episode had a lot less dialogue.
Yeah,
sort of
we don't know.
About how Rodney and Cassandra feel about the breakup. And that's the part that's quite repetitive, really, for me.
Maybe there is somewhere out there, there's an answer to all my problems. Somewhere out there is the original script, maybe, for Rodney Come Home. And we can see what John Sullivan added.
Yeah,
maybe.
True. That would be cool to see.
Yeah. Okay, one other note I had is Raquel made the biggest trifle in the world here. Is that not the biggest trifle you've ever seen?
It is.
Who's for trifle? Okay, that's it.
Yeah, you're right. For such a small amount of people eating it, I suppose they were going to be eating that for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Very true. But trifles are quite big, usually, from what I remember when we used to have them when we were kids.
Trifle for you, Mrs. Hall?
What? So we're going to stop there for this week because this is quite a long episode, so we're breaking it up into 2 parts. So join us next week for part 2 of Rodney Come Home. Until then,
I don't know what you're thinking.
Au revoir, listeners. If you like what you hear and want to contact us, please email us at longlivehookystreetpodcast@gmail.com. Wherever you are listening to us, please give us a like, subscribe, or follow. And it really helps us out if you give the podcast a rating or review. Use our Linktree to check out our Facebook and Instagram pages. And if you feel inclined, you can buy us a pina colada on buymeacoffee.com. Bonjour.